My name is Mikka Jacobsen, and I am a writer from Calgary. I'm defending Suzette Mayr's The Sleeping Car Porter. The Sleeping Car Porter follows the story of R.T. Baxter, a Black sleeping car porter on a 4-night trip from Montreal to Vancouver in the 1920s. While the train's wealthy white passengers gorge on fancy meals in the dining car, sit about gossiping and reading, and sleep in private cars and sleeping berths, the Black porters shine the passengers' shoes, clean their dirty linens, and wait on them with superhuman politeness at all hours of the day and night. Baxter is obsessed with mouths and teeth. He has taken the porter job to earn the tuition for dentistry school, and he lives under the constant threat of being fired and never realizing his dream. Early in the 4-day journey, Baxter finds an erotic postcard, 2 men, 1 Black and 1 white, entwined and naked. Although Baxter knows the postcard could get him fired, or worse, possibly land him in prison, he can't seem to throw it away. The postcard reawakens his yearning for Edwin Drew, Baxter's porter instructor. At its heart, The Sleeping Car Porter is a story of lost and forbidden love. But at the same time, the novel delightfully toys with the conventions of the ghost story. Sleep deprived to the point of hallucination, Baxter sometimes sees things that hover outside ordinary reality. When the train gets waylaid by a mudslide, reality itself starts to fray, and the passengers' secrets begin to unravel. The Sleeping Car Porter is Mayr's 6th novel, and while it circles some of the themes of her earlier books, the eruption of the supernatural into everyday life, celebratory queerness, Black lives in Canada, kindness and cruelty, and the extraordinary power of both, in some ways, despite its historical setting, The Sleeping Car Porter feels perhaps most poised to respond to our current cultural moment. Any reader of this book will be astounded by the depth of research that informs the novel. Carved flowers in train car vestibules, uniform buttons, luggage, book titles, forgotten slang. The exquisite level of historical detail gives the reader the sense of being yanked back in time and set down in 1929. Sadly, the gross exploitation of the sleeping car porters, extremely low wages, inhumane conditions, the dehumanizing habit of the white passengers calling every porter George, starvation, sleeplessness, and the suggestion that a Black porter should be happy to have such a job. These elements of the book starkly remind the reader that the wheels of capitalism inevitably crush those kept outside its engines of power, and that in Canada, those people have historically been and continue to be racialized minorities. Mayr's novel shows us how both capitalism and racism harden the body and spirit. The casual racism Baxter continually endures in the novel is gutting. And what better symbol could a writer choose to represent the history of colonial expansion in Canada than a train? The sleeping car porter's train chugs along the line with white passengers telling Baxter of their abolitionist ancestors and imagining themselves to be beacons of racial progress one moment, then snapping their fingers and calling him George the next. And Baxter is not only crushed by the conditions of his job, he is also hemmed in by homophobia and the criminalization of queerness, and his sexuality threatens him from all sides. The white women passengers who might desire him or perceive him as a threat, the white men he sometimes meets in laneways and dark woods, and Black men like Edwin Drew, whose reputations and family lives face ruin if their queerness is uncovered. In The Sleeping Car Porter, it is with both hope and sadness that the reader understands how far and how little a distance we have traveled from the racist and homophobic roots of the past 100 years in Canada. All that said, to my mind, one of the most brilliant elements of the book, and what makes this book a fierce Giller Prize contender, is that Baxter's oppression never outshines his hope, or the writing itself, which is extraordinary. The book is full of Mayr's wry humor and gift for metaphor. For example, Mayr gives us lines like, hunched like a prawn, Baxter washes his furry teeth, his furry face over a wash basin. Or consider this delightful description. Another red cap, so young he still has womb slime under his collar, stands alone to the side. The similes in this book are brilliant. And Mayr gives the same generous attention to her sentences as she does to her characters. Baxter has a delightful penchant for giving sly nicknames to all the train's passengers: Mango, Lickerhead, Punch and Judy, the Spider. And even though the train's passengers treat him with blatant disregard, Baxter and Mayr never lack empathy, even for the worst of them. The book brings together a large cast of characters and with gusto makes each feel as alive as the last. And Baxter, who is certainly no pushover, despite all that he must not grin and bear, sees the humanity in even the most egregious passengers. We see Baxter help the conductor, Mad Mary, find his bed during a PTSD-induced nightmare. We follow Baxter as he consoles and befriends a child who has lost her mother and whose grieving grandmother seems ill-equipped to care for the girl. We see Baxter, above everything, yearn for what we as humans all desire: to be loved and cherished, and to love and cherish in return. For a gay Black man in Canada in the 1920s, as the novel makes clear, this was a right that was largely denied. And yet, even here, Mayr's book and Baxter himself never lose hope about what might be possible, even if what is possible are stolen moments in a laneway or an imagined and almost grasped future. Baxter is the sweetest, funniest, kindest, and most alive character I've met in such a long time. He never lapses into cynicism or self-pity, as I would surely do in his circumstances. He remains dedicated to his dreams, convinced of a better life just on the horizon. The sleeping car porter unearths kindness and generosity and human tenderness in the most unlikely places. The novel does not shy away from the passions and humiliations of the erotic, and it writes gay sex as beautifully as it writes everything else, the ugly and the wondrous alike. It is a beyond worthy contender for the Giller Prize. Baxter found his way into my heart on the very first page. I truly love him, and I truly love this book. Thank you so much.